LLMs in particular, I think we're hitting a plateau at this point,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. And I've been doing more reading recently about research on how LLMs think. And it turns out it's just as everybody, not everybody, but like the machine learning crowd expected, it's all statistics.
Oh, well, hello, welcome to Project Neo podcast. Here is Elijah Marecki. They are the co-founder and CTO of Searchless. They're ex-Dropbox, ex-Amazon software engineer. He's a great guy. Talk to him. We connected on LinkedIn. He commented in one of my posts actually, and just such a great guy. Very humble, very nice, and yeah, we'll get to know him more. Uh, get to know them more in this podcast. Very amazing. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about AI. What were your first thoughts when ChatGPT came out, and where do you think it's heading?
Yeah. So I took a look at that question and decided to take a step back. So like when GPT-2 came out, which is like a year-ish before ChatGPT, maybe 2 years, I was pretty excited because I was running a D&D campaign at the time, and I was like, oh man, imagine we can like use this to generate NPCs and stuff, and
Mm.
it was really trash, but it was still very cool. And then when ChatGPT came out, um, I think one of the first things I tried with that is D&D stuff. So
Very
I was like,
nice.
okay, pretend you're a dwarf and here's the context, and you meet some travelers. What do you say? And like, what do you have to sell and whatever. So I thought it was really cool. I wasn't, I didn't really get it, I guess, until maybe 6 months after that. It was like before then, I was like, oh, this is like a cool thing. I can use it to generate poems and whatever, do D&D stuff. But it wasn't like super useful for programming. It wasn't um, like a game changer with software development, like as far as like integrating ChatGPT or LLMs in general with software.
Right.
But then when things started coming out, like agents, like I saw this one Twitter post where this researcher hooked it up to Minecraft, and it like it went beyond just the LLM because it used the ChatGPT to do the thinking, so to speak, but it had like a RAG-based solution um, that would like store instructions. It's like, okay, I know that if I do these 5 steps, then I can build, I don't know, a house or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played Minecraft, but I watched the video. And then, like, at the end of the day, you could give it instructions like build a bridge between these two mountains, and it would just figure it out over time. And like, you don't tell it how to do it. It was just
Wow.
like exploring the world. It's like, okay, I know how to build wood. I know how to like build a door. I know how to, do this. I know how to do that. And then it would just go off and start in, like creating these instructions. Like, okay, here's a set of things I can do to build something, like some steps. So I need to like repeat that same thing over and over and over again, and then I get like a bunch of steps up the mountain or whatever. Um, so at that point, I was like, okay, this is extremely powerful, and it's going to open up AI to people who don't have PhDs in machine learning.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, because before that, it's like I was interested in machine learning for a long time, like, or I guess AI for a long time, for probably like 10 years or something. I took an AI course a while ago, and everything was moving towards deep neural networks. And I was like, I'm not crazy about like statistics. Like it's cool, but like I don't want to spend every hour of my life just looking at statistics,
Right.
which is like what machine learning people have done for the past, I don't know how long, 20 years or whatever, or longer. It's been around for a long time. So I kind of like, you know, took a pause on that train of thought And yeah, when ChatGPT came out and I saw this Minecraft agent, I was like, okay, you can actually build a very sophisticated system with clever data handling and like some prompt engineering, which
Yeah.
sounds very doable. And that's around the time I quit my job and started a company. So, like to answer the second part of your question, where do you think it's headed? Um, with LLMs in particular, I don't think. I think like we're hitting a plateau at this point,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. And like I've been doing more reading recently about like research on how LLMs think. Um, and it turns out it's just as everybody, not everybody, but like the machine learning crowd expected, it's all like statistics. Like
Mm-hmm.
under the hood, it's like it collects all these ideas together and um, like does a statistical prediction about what the next word should be, or like what the next. If you take a step back from that, even it's kind of like it first thinks of the next thing to talk about, like the general idea. So like an example I saw was, what is the capital of Germany?
Right.
And then when like all the concepts that the LLM starts looking at, like all of the hot weights in the model, are things related to Germany as well as capital cities. So you'll see things like Paris and like Toronto, or not Ottawa, whoops, like Washington D.C., like all these other capitals, and then it will like correlate those with like it's
Wow.
basically correlating Germany and capital, and then like Berlin is the answer, right? But that's not a full answer because that's just one word. So then it needs to come up with like a token to spit out. So like the first one would be like and that's not even giving the answers yet. And then it'll be like the capital of Germany is Berlin. But like that's basically how it does its sentence planning. And again, I'm not like a PhD machine learning guy, so I might have got a bunch of details wrong there, but that's what I understood from that paper.
Very, very
Um,
interesting. Yeah. So it sounds
yeah,
like this AI out there, LLMs, are actually making wrong assumptions first, then trying to like find the right, word that should come up. And then based on statistics, it's like, oh, so this is the right thing, then they came out with that, something like that.
yeah, yeah. But it's incredible how far that can get you. Like
Yeah.
you have things like Lovable, which can produce like
Oh my
a
goodness.
decent prototype of an app, and like it seems like it's doing a lot more than next word prediction, but at the end of the day, that is all it's doing. But it's
Yeah.
just
Tell me
it's such a
more.
massive amount of weights.
Yeah, tell me
Yeah.
more about like why do you think it's plateauing? Because this is not what I was seeing actually. I think it's like going further, but tell me more about the trend that you're seeing that it's plateauing actually.
Yeah. So I'm talking about the models in particular. I think the ecosystem is still going strong. Like a lot of the improvements we're seeing in tools these days aren't actually LLM improvements, in my opinion. It's all stuff like how do we do efficient reg and like vector embedding lookups and all this kind of stuff. Like how can we like tool use is another example. Like a lot of the like a lot of the noticeable improvements have been things like context window and speed
Right.
and price. So like yes, you could feed in like what is it, a million tokens into Llama 4, I think, or something crazy like that. But like it still doesn't have that planning aspect that it needs. And the one of the creators of Llama, Dr. LeCun, Jan LeCun, I'm probably butchering his name, but he doesn't even believe in LLMs anymore, so to speak. Like he's like,
Whoa.
okay, LLMs are kind of, they're already here and they're not exciting for me because like we can't even simulate a cat brain right now. And like what I want to do is simulate like a mouse and then a cat and then a dog and then
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
monkey and then a human or whatever. So like his perspective is that LLMs aren't going to be the way to get us to like they're not the path to AGI. We need to come up with some new approach. But that said, like a lot of the just to circle back, a lot of the improvements recently have been tool use and integrating with other software.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what is what happened to the news of AGI?
Yeah, it's funny because I that's one of the things I was really worried about with ChatGPT. Um,
Yeah.
because if LLMs got us to AGI, I think society would change way too fast. You know, like if you have AGI, you you don't need any knowledge workers anymore, for one. Like, okay, let me take that back. If you have affordable AGI, you don't need any knowledge workers. Like, if you could pay an AGI $1 a minute to do anything you want, like $1 a minute for programming, $1 a minute for accounting, $1 a minute for inventing a better wheel, $1 a minute for you name it,
Yeah,
then why would you hire humans?
yeah.
And, you know, like like there are a bunch of different definitions of AGI, but in my opinion, it's like anything that like a smart human can do. If the AI can do that, then that's AGI. That's like a very loosey goosey term or uh, thing to say. But there's even worse definitions. Like the Microsoft definition is when AI makes $1 billion in revenue, we've hit AGI, which like
What?
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So like a while ago, OpenAI was like, we hit AGI, and then like you read about what their definition of AGI is with Microsoft, and it's like when it hits $1 billion in revenue. It's like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very capitalist kind of thinking. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
That's
yeah. It
I
doesn't make any
I don't
sense.
agree with where it's going if they think like that. But yeah, it is what it is. That's where big tech is, you know? Where the
Yeah,
money's at there, that's where they are. Yeah, so follow-up question. So you've talked about AI a lot, LLMs, and you've used it a lot. You're using it a lot on Searchless as well. So how do you think we should properly use AI? A lot of people in this podcast are engineers as well, and probably a lot of them are still kind of learning. And there's a lot of things, right? Privacy issues, and like for example, I just found out um, you can use rules, MCP, and all this in Cursor. Like, how do you properly use it? At least in the um, latest versions of LLMs right now.
yeah. So, are you talking about like how do you use it for productivity, or how do you use it for like how should we properly use it in society? 'Cause those are
Yeah, that's a good part. But we can start with the productivity first.
productivity. Okay. Yeah. I think just you should kind of treat it like anything in your development environment. Like take a day a month or something, like one day of the month, to try out some new tools and see what you like and what works well for your workflow. So, like for me, I tried out Cursor. Uh, I wasn't crazy about the workflow. Just like I think I like being more directly involved in what's getting written.
Mm-hmm.
So like my style is more like I use Copilot to like autocomplete functions or whatever, and that like I use that all the time. Like a lot of the time I'll just like type something out and then wait for the completion to appear, hit tab, and then I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's 90% of what I want done, and now I'm just gonna tweak it. But like with Cursor, I think the workflow of like it edits like 10 different files at once, really hard to deal with, because it's like, okay, why did it edit foo.ps? Like I wouldn't have edited that file for this change. Why is it doing that? Should I have done that? And then like it's yeah, it's kind of weird. So I personally wasn't crazy about it. I do like Copilot a lot more. How it's much more
Hmm.
like very, very advanced autocomplete. And another thing I use it for is debugging. So this is one thing I actually did like about Cursor. I could tell it like, okay, here are 10 different files that are relevant to this bug, and then I explain the bug to it, and then I'll say like, where should I look? And what might be the issue? Because like with debugging, a lot of it is just trying to figure out where to look. And if you have a big code base, that can be
Yeah.
a difficult thing. So like it might come back with 10 different answers, and I'll like look through them. It's like number one, yeah, no, probably not there. Number two, it might be there. I'll add some log statements there. Number three, oh, this might actually be it. I'm going to add some debug assertions or whatever. Yeah, and then I think the last way I use it is uh, with LLMs directly. So at Searchless, we have something called Libre Chat set up, and it's basically like ChatGPT, except you can hook it up to whatever LLM you want. So we
Hmm.
have it hooked up to a bunch of Llama models, GPT as well. And at some point, we're going to do Gemini, yeah, and Claude, a few different Claude models in there. Um, and I use that a lot for rubber duck programming as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way I like to describe it is talking to an LLM about your programming problems is just as good as talking to a rubber duck, except it actually responds. And like
True.
sometimes, it's like sometimes it responds with garbage, and you'll be like, okay, whatever. But like the process of talking with something about a problem really helps you hash out the problem. Like for a long time, like, do you know about rubber duck programming?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess for the audience, it's like you have a rubber duck, and if you run into a problem, you talk to it, and an idea magically pops into your head. And like some people will talk to their pets or whatever, or
True.
you could
Yeah.
do rubber duck.
Just
Um,
talking out loud, but like no
yeah.
one really answers back. But this time with LLM, it could answer back to
Yes.
you.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, and like a lot of the time, it will actually tell you things that make you think. And like even if it's like, oh, did you try this? And then you respond, and you could be like, no, that wouldn't work because of X, Y, Z, or whatever. And like if you just pretend it's a coworker and you're just chatting with it and like trying to figure out a problem, like it helps. It's really helpful for like guiding your brain in the right direction, I find. Like a lot of the time it would actually give me wrong answers, but then I'm typing to it, I'm like, no, that wouldn't work because of this and this and that, and then I'm like, wait a minute. But like and then like for whatever reason my brain just like clicks into a certain thing, and I'm like, oh, I actually know what the problem is now. So like
That's
even
good.
if the LLM doesn't directly tell me like change line 173 to if false instead of if true, like it will I find it really helpful.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I should use that one for debugging for sure. Yeah, thanks for the tip. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I've heard a lot of vibe coding and then talking to like LLMs. I'm still kind of like easing into it because I'd rather, to be honest, like pair programming with someone really, really helps. So I think, if there's no one that you can like find to pair program, then probably LLMs would be
Yeah.
really, really good. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, let's get to the other one, like how to use AI in the society and how we can help, like yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'll keep this one quick. Uh, there's a lot of like in my line of work, like their HR industry, there's a lot of talk about cheating in job interviews. So like
Mm-hmm.
I forget what site there is, but there's some like 20-year-old high
I
school
think I know.
dropout or
Interview
whatever.
coder?
I don't know.
Interview
Yeah,
coders?
yeah, yeah. I think
They
that's it.
actually got
Yeah.
funding? Like, how? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I think that's just exposing an issue that already existed. Like
Mm,
lead code interviews are horrible, and like you're basically testing for people who do the lead code grind
right.
the hardest. And like like when I'm hiring people, like I like being able to figure out DSA problems is good, but like that's not what I want to optimize for when I'm hiring people. It's just the easiest way to be objective, in my opinion. Like I think that's why a lot of big tech companies use it, because like, okay, here's a rubric. If they get it in O log n time, that's passed with like a very strong approval.
Mm-hmm.
If they did ON time, it's all right. If they did ON squared, reject them or whatever. So it's like very very easy to rule people out based on the runtime complexity. So like I think that's like I get why big tech companies do it, um, but I think there's much better ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like the approach I really like to take is like obviously number one, interview them with search list first. And that's like um, you'll like dive into your past experience about different skills. But then when I actually talk to them in person, like as long as they do well on that first stage, I'll just talk to them a lot about something they built and try to get them to explain it to me. And that part of the interview is really testing like how well does this person communicate something that I have no context about to me in 30 minutes. And like if they can do that and I understand what they did in a decent amount of detail, that's a good sign,
Right.
because like in the real world, like that's what you have to do a lot of the time. Like a lot of programming is communicating how you did something and like why you did it a certain way.
Yeah.
And then like the second part of that would be like the more challenge part of the interview. So they might say like I built a like a real-time voice chat or something, for example. Um, and then like I'll ask them like, okay, what technologies did you use? I'll drill down into why they made certain decisions and why they and whatever. And the challenge part of it would be, okay, like so you built this voice chat thing. How would you support video efficiently? And then that's the part of the interview where they're like, oh, wait a minute, like I have no idea. And I'm like, okay, good. Like try just brainstorm with me. And then that's like testing their brainstorming ability, as well as like how fast they can think on their feet and try to figure something out without having done it before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So anyways, that's like in the recruitment industry, I think like the interview coder and stuff, like it's exposing an existing issue, which is the interviews are broken, and resumes are broken. Like I remember going to this resume workshop a while ago, like 10 years ago or 15 years ago or something. And some of the tips I got, I still remember. They're like, use a nice font and make sure you have enough padding on the resume,
My
and
goodness.
you know, like have your name in bold or like whatever, like all this stupid stuff that recruiters will reject you over if you don't pass all these like aesthetic design decisions. And I was like, at the time, I was like, this doesn't make any sense, you know, like why do they care how it's designed? But I'll go with it because um, if I don't do all these things, then recruiters are just going to throw my resume in the garbage. So like it's still kind of like that today. I don't see it being like that for long. And I know I've been rambling about HR a lot. So I think one other thing I wanted to talk about is education. Another big area I'm interested in with AI is education. And in particular, a lot of profs are, I guess, profs and high school teachers and anybody else in education are worried about how do they deal with cheating. But again, I think this is exposing an existing issue because I know people like I did tutoring in university, and like some of my tutees would ask me like, oh hey, could I just pay you for tutor time to write my assignment for me? And I'm like, no, I'm still in university. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to get an academic offense. And I think I'm like, if you want to do that, that's up to you to decide whether you're going to do that. But I'm not going to be involved in that kind of thing. And then like I'm sure they'd just go off and try to find somebody else who would do it. The most extreme story I heard, and like I don't know if this is true, and like it's literally the plot line to a movie, is there was this woman who went to university and she had a really rich dad, and she never did any work at all, and her dad hired like
Oh
an
man.
impersonator to write all of her exams and,
And
and
exactly, this is
do
what you
all of
can
her
do with
assignments and
AI
stuff.
now.
Yeah, it's like this is crazy. Like this is like before
Hmm.
LLMs were a big thing, but it's crazy. But yeah, and exactly just like you say, it's like that's what LLMs are basically doing now. So it didn't cause this problem. Like there was already an existing problem where people could pay somebody to do their homework for them, or
Yeah.
in some cases take their exams if you could find a lookalike who knows a lot about the topic. And yeah, AI just made it affordable. So
True.
now, like when it was just rich people who could afford it, nobody cared. But
Right.
now that everybody can do it, now it's a problem.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways,
Very,
that's it.
very valid points. I mean, if you're doing that and you could just afford someone and now you can afford LLM, you're just cheating on yourself, dude. Like you're not a learner. You're not doing this for yourself, right? You're just doing shortcuts. Yeah, I experienced something similar too. Like someone just asked me like, "Can you make the final project for me?" I'm like, "No, dude. Like I can't,
Mhm.
I don't want to do that."
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Or like,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
be on the call with me when, making the interview. Like, no, no.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've heard
And
of that before too.
and I think
Yeah.
that's what's gonna prevail in the age of AI. It's like values, What do you value? What are the values that you hold? And that's gonna be like that's gonna shine, I think. Like integrity
Yeah.
and, like being true to yourself. I think like
Yeah.
a lot of things can be
Yeah.
cheated right now. And
Hmm.
if you stay true to yourself, like you know that you're wrong sometimes. You know that you can do something great, and you did it honestly. I think that can be rewarded, and that should be rewarded. Hope we prevail and we come out of this whatever we have right now in AI. Like as a better human society. Uh,
Yeah.
it's hard, but we just can hope, and all of us can just we know a lot of things. We know that AI can do this stuff, like like a lot of shortcuts can be made, but at the end of the day, like, are you really helping yourself? Are you really helping the society? And that's yeah. I'm rambling too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like on that topic though, like you mentioned that like if you're cheating in school, you're kind of cheating yourself.
Yeah,
Um, and I I agree and disagree. Um, so like I remember reading this one article that was saying people, I guess in particular students who use LLMs a lot, when they're learning don't actually learn the
Mm.
program, right? So what they'll learn is like, how do I prompt the LLM to do what I need to do? But then it kind of gives them an illusion that they're getting more productive because they're learning how to prompt the LLM to, or prompt cursor or Lovable or whatever tool they want to use. Like they're getting better with the tool, but then when they hit the ceiling of what that tool can do, they're just stuck,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like when they actually have to dive in themselves and try to figure something out, they have no idea what to do because they didn't actually program
Yeah, because you didn't do the
95
work.
95% of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I think especially with more junior developers, be very careful with using these tools. Um, and if you do hit that like that ceiling of the tool, just take some time and try to just build some stuff on your own and like figure out how all this stuff actually works.
I love that.
Um,
I
yeah,
love that. Yeah, yeah. I'm advocate of that still for till now. Yeah. It's different, like be, getting your hands dirty is just really, really different, right?
yep.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, so next question. What's one thing you think is true or constant about tech or your work over the years you had in the space?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky question, and I think the best answer I have is that computers fundamentally don't change. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to elaborate on that, like Alan Turing came up with the Turing model in like I don't know when, 19 something, like or 1920 or 1914, I don't know. So early 1900s he came up with that model. And computers are still basically following that model. Like whether it's CPU programming or GPU programming, it's like or arguably even quantum computing because
Mm-hmm.
that's I believe also Turing complete as well. I'm not sure if it's a superset of Turing like a Turing complete level computing or if it's a subset, but like at a fundamental level, um, the way we compute things stays the same. And like going beyond that, going a little bit less abstract, the von Neumann architecture is probably here to stay. And for people who don't know, that's like the whole architecture of like you have a CPU and then you have main memory and then you have like storage and all this kind of stuff. And as far as I know, that model hasn't changed since like the first computer, the ENIAC, where like it had like a bunch of logic gates for its CPU, I guess. Um, and then it had like some form of memory. It's like even I think it was vacuum tubes or or that other type. I forget what type of memory it used. But like fundamentally it's the same basic architecture as computers today. And like I don't imagine that's going to change unless we have like a major revamp of computers. Like
Mm.
if we start creating biological computers where we like grow a brain in a vat and
True.
then run our programs on that, like then maybe that constant will change. But like I think that's my answer to that
So
question.
what you're trying to say too, that all LLMs are basically in a fundamental architecture, CPU, memory, and storage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like everything runs in there, and like even GPUs, like GPUs are and TPUs for that matter are basically the same thing as a CPU, except like they have different operations that they're good at, and they have like a different number of cores, basically. So like with the GPU, it's like graphics programming processing unit. So it's like very heavily optimized for doing large scale like mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
So that like that's why it's great with AI, because with a machine learning model, it's also just like a whole bunch of linear algebra. At the very base level of it, it's just like millions and millions of linear algebra calculations, and that's what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like these days, we have tensor processing units, which specifically are just for tensor operations, which is like part of linear algebra. Um, but yeah, like fundamentally, whether it's a CPU, a TPU, a GPU, or maybe even a quantum processor, it's still the whole architecture where you have a set of instructions and you have a memory bank and you have like some registers, and you get the processing unit to like iterate over the instructions and maybe do a
Yeah.
memory lookup, or maybe like call to a peripheral device or loop back on some instruction. Yeah, that's the big constant. And I think why I wanted to talk about that is it's important to understand what your computer is actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think especially with high level programming, you're like, oh, let's like create a class and then some class hierarchy or whatever. And like a lot of the time you're thinking about all these extremely high level things that are like so abstracted away from what the computer is actually doing
Yeah.
that it's hard to reason about performance, right? So if you keep like the how they actually work in mind, and like try to imagine what the computer has to do
Mm-hmm.
for some set of tasks, like that goes a long way for writing efficient code, even before doing like actual optimization where you're like whipping out a flame graph and trying to optimize runtimes for things or whatever. Um, like if you just know that like okay, like there's like CPU instructions and then there's CPU cache
Mm-hmm.
and there's memory, and like this is how we send data between the CPU and the GPU, and like all of these things, and networking is a big one. Then you get a good idea of how can you write software that avoids the expensive things. And by expensive, I mean things like making like memory requests, or making sure when you're doing some processing, you try to keep cache locality in the CPU, um, and stuff like that. So
Amazing. I think I gotta have like another session with you, just two of us. Teach me how to do this stuff
yeah,
so I can be
yeah.
better in engineering. Amazing.
No, there's a good book. It's called Algorithmica. It's fully online, and it talks about all this kind of stuff. Like
Uh-huh.
how does CPU cache work? How does cache locality and
Amazing.
like branch prediction work, and like all of this stuff about how modern computers actually run. And yeah, highly recommend you check that out.
Oh yeah, for sure. I may be stupid asking this, but this also be applied in like front-end engineering, like with JavaScript? Because JavaScript is so abstracted, but can you actually do some optimizations like that on that level?
Um, yeah, I think it's more difficult, but you should still keep these things in mind. Okay, I'll talk about the CPU cache a little bit.
Okay.
So when you do, say you have a list of numbers, if you have a for loop and it's like for I equals 0, I less than length, blah blah blah, whatever. As soon as you access the first index of that array, if that array is actually stored in like contiguous memory, which I believe with JavaScript it is, I don't think it does anything weird under the hood. It probably just stores that all those numbers stuck together.
Mm-hmm.
the CPU will actually um, like pull in a whole chunk of memory at a time. So even if you're not requesting the first 10 numbers, it might actually keep all of those 10 numbers in the CPU cache
Mm-hmm.
when you access the first one. So then once you access the second one, the CPU doesn't even have to go into memory. All it has to do is like, oh, this thing is in cache. I can just pull that in like a single CPU cycle instead of like 20 CPU cycles or however long it takes for to access RAM. That said, um, it is more difficult because it's like there's a whole like interpreter and compiler and stuff. Like it's really really complicated how JavaScript works,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like there's layers and layers of stuff that happens between your code and the processor. So it's a lot harder to reason about. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like I'm sure like if you want to be a high performance front end engineer, it's like read about V8 and
Yeah.
like how all of this stuff actually works. And like there's probably a lot of things with JavaScript runtimes in particular that you should know that like this book Algorithmica wouldn't, maybe it's useful, maybe not,
Mm-hmm.
but there's like all this whole stack of other stuff you need to know for how to optimize JavaScript code.
Amazing. So, what I'm getting from here is like you really gotta know the fundamentals, and not only like what JavaScript is, but like what you're saying, like how the CPU cache work and all this like very fundamental stuff, like memory allocation and all that. Yeah, a lot of times, like me even like try tend to like ignore this stuff because like at the day-to-day work we don't really deal with this stuff, but it's very nice to be reminded. Do you recommend this even for front-end engineers to like learn fundamental stuff like this?
Um, yeah, I think it's good to know because it's one of those things like even in my own programming, like a lot of the time I don't think about it too much. Like I'll write the code to get the thing done,
Yeah.
and then like before I push a commit, I'll be like, okay, how can I improve this? And then I'll try to improve it if I can. But like I'm not like looking at the CPU instructions that every single line of code generates and
Yeah.
micro optimizing everything. It's like sometimes I actually do that, but very, very rarely. Like I think the only time I did that at Surplus was with like our video processing code.
Hmm.
Because like I really wanted to make sure it runs fast. Yeah, yeah. So on the front end, um, I'd say definitely look into the JavaScript runtime.
Hmm.
Um, because like if you take like an hour like once a weekend, spend like a couple hours reading about like how does a browser actually do stuff, like
Yeah.
how does it get pixels on the screen, like how does it make web requests, and how does it
Yeah.
allocate memory and all this stuff. Like you could probably without a lot of work make a lot more efficient software, because like once in a while like on LinkedIn I'll see people post like, oh, don't use this function, use that function instead because of these weird implementation details that makes it 10 times as fast. And like if you don't read about how this stuff works, it doesn't make any sense. But like if you're like really in the weeds and like you actually understand how the runtime works, then maybe stuff like that would be more obvious.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely like read up more on runtime engines and V8. Yeah, definitely. I'm inspired to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, all right. So let's get to be more personal. I have a question here. How did you grow up and how did it help you in your career? What is that background that other people didn't know about you that played an important role in your life?
Yeah. So I grew up on computers, basically. So my oldest brother is 20 years older than me,
Oh, wow.
and yeah. So like he was like programming when I was born, basically,
Mm,
like working as a programmer when I was born. Um, and my dad was also a programmer, although like by the time I was born, he wasn't really a programmer anymore. He was more on like the like the analyst side, consulting side of tech.
mm,
Um, so yeah, like he didn't have like much programming influence on me, but I think like my oldest brother would like give me his old computers, um, like give me old games that he had and stuff, and then I'd learn from that. I think like since we had a pretty techy home, like opening up a text editor wasn't something super weird to me.
mm.
Like I remember, I think the first time I ever did anything close to programming was I had these bug books. I don't even know. I don't even know how old I was. It was really young, and it was like these. It's like, oh, this is an ant. Like this is how how their colonies work and blah 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 whatever. I was very much a bug kid, very interested in bugs. So I like opened up like a text editor, and like my brother was like, "Oh, you can like build an HTML site, by the way." And then I just like started like using some basic formatting. Like, what did I do? I think I was just like plagiarizing it into a Word doc.
I see.
And then my brother was like, "Oh, by the way, there's this thing called HTML, and if you do that, you can make it into a website." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds cool.
Mm.
I'm gonna start doing that." So I started like doing very, very basic HTML. It was just like bold tag and like title tags and images and whatever. But like that's like my first introduction to it. Um, and then like when I started actually getting into like proper programming, it was because of games. So I used to make Flash animations. Like I don't know, do you remember like those Flash games online?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like I'd play a lot of those when I was a kid, and I had like Macromedia MX
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah, I
Flash
remember.
MX or something. Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, and I'd make animations, so, like different cartoons and whatever. And then I don't know how I got into this. I think it was my cousin told me like, "Oh, by the way, you can do all these things and like make your animations interactive by like adding code to buttons and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. How do I do it?" And then he like taught me about it. So I think like my first like actual programming was like making interactive menus. So like I might have like some drawing, and I remember I had this one where like you could click different buttons and like change the clothes on this character or whatever, like change their hair and like make them look really really goofy, and make them have a carrot nose or something. You know, that was like one of the first programs. But like after that, I was programming in Flash for a couple of years, and I think like the furthest I got with Flash was making a game that was classified as fun by some of my friends.
All right.
So I'd say that that's a success. Before that, none of them were fun, I guess. They were just like garbage. But yeah, that was
That's
fun.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the games for sure was the introduction, and before that, bugs.
And bugs followed you around until now.
Bugs, yeah, yeah. There's still a lot of bugs where I live, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, not a lot, but yeah, it's like when I was a kid, I would literally like dig in the dirt and be like, oh, look, a grub, and whatever.
That's so
I just,
cute.
I just yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there a particular non-tech hobby or interest that has influenced your work in tech? Could be sports, TV shows, books, anything.
Yeah. Um, I think the big one, I mean, bugs, I guess, when I was a kid.
Okay.
But these days, I guess I lost interest in bugs, and um, it's more like psychology,
Oh.
I'd say. Um, Psychology and games. Like games are kind of tech, like video games in particular. But I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into games that I use in my own software. So like things like performance, like how do you, like without opening up a flame graph or something, how do you write some code that's generally performant? And like I take a lot of ideas from the game industry for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as well as with UX. Like a lot of games do a very good job of making tutorials fun. So
Mm-hmm.
like I think there's a lot of games where there's like an actual tutorial and it will be like, oh, like press the A key to move left, press the S key to move backwards. And like those are, very boring. But then there's some games um, where the tutorials will like slowly introduce you to more and more concepts.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's this one game, like this RTS I play with my brother called Northgard, and I don't think they even have a tutorial, but in the campaign of that game, it like level 1 is very simple. It's like, oh, like build a house by clicking this button or whatever. Like you build it and then like it slowly introduces you to more concepts,
Yeah.
and then like every level it introduces you to more things. And like it doesn't really feel like a tutorial. It kind of just slowly introduces you to more concepts, and then before you know it, you know every mechanic in the game, and you can start playing with your friends and whatever. Like with that UX tutorial aspect, or sorry, like that approach to tutorials is really good for UX. Like because on a front end, how do you build a website that works like that? Like how can you build something that's just like fun and like obvious about how it can work.
Yeah, the
Like
onboarding flow, right?
yeah, the onboarding flow. So like you don't like bombard people with tutorial videos and crap. I like people just want to jump in and start using the thing right now. Like they don't want to read all this content or like go through a tutorial and blah blah blah. Um, and like I've seen some websites do this really well, where like you can just get started, and there might be like a little arrow saying like, "Oh, your toolbox is over here. Take a look there and figure it out."
Mm-hmm.
And then like when you hover over everything, it will say like, "Oh, this is this is the tool to do this thing." You hover over something else, this is the tool to do that thing, and they're really well designed and like obvious how to do things. Like I forget what app it was, but like there's some like flow charting app that was like that, where there was no tutorial, but it was just very like little tidbits of tutorials were like hidden throughout the app, and that's like it feels much more like those video game tutorials where it's not just throwing all this content at you at once. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like reminding you how to do things as you use the thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's
yeah,
why
that's okay.
gamification sometimes also works. I don't clearly remember which app, but Yeah, like you could level up, or like you're going
Mm.
through like a training program, but like you're actually going through some steps. I think that's kind of like a good onboarding flow, right? Yeah, I totally agree with like videos. Like you don't want to like sit down for like another 10 minutes, like going through all this stuff. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah, I think yeah, like gamification could be really interesting. Is like one uh very good tool as well for sure. Like Duolingo, you know.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. All right, a hypothetical question this time. If you could have dinner with any tech leader, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Yeah, I'm gonna say a little bit of an unusual one,
Okay.
and I'm gonna say maybe like Leonardo da Vinci or Benjamin Franklin.
Wow.
And they're not like
Yeah, they're kind of tech too. Like,
yeah, they're actually very techy. Like I mean like obviously not programmers, but like I also thought about like there's some like more modern people, but those two in particular were very much curious about everything. Like so like everybody knows Da Vinci for like painting and everybody knows Franklin for politics. But like Benjamin Franklin also did a bunch of physics experiments with electricity. He he founded a fire department. He um, worked on unifying currency in the United States because like when it was first united, like all of the different states had their own currencies,
mm,
and like some of them used coins, some of them used paper money, and all this stuff. And like I guess when they united, he was involved in the people who united the states. So like he was involved in unifying their currency and stuff. And like he did a whole bunch of other things as well. He's an author. He did like poetry and all this stuff. He spoke to a whole bunch of different languages.
mm,
Um, I think he started a newspaper. Like he and yeah, he was a very interesting guy. Uh, but Da Vinci was another one who was kind of like that, where like yes, he did painting, but he also did a lot of sketching and a lot of anatomy and geology and um, made a bunch of inventions. And like why I bring up these two people is I really look up to them in how they were just interested in so many random things, and like they were very like successful in being able to do so many different things
mm.
because they just said yes. It's like how does like where's the heart in a human body? And then Da Vinci would be like, oh, like he had like this doctor friend, and he's like,
Yeah,
I want to watch you like dissect this person, and I'm going to draw them as you're dissecting them,
yeah,
and like,
it's
it, like
the
it's
curiosity
like
is like another level.
yeah, it's wild, and like
Mm,
he used that in a lot of his inventions and in his paintings and in his drawings. So because he understood like how your muscles are structured and where your organs are and like blah blah blah, and he like understood light from doing his science stuff. um he was able to make incredible paintings just because like he pulled together so much knowledge from random domains.
right.
um yeah, and he did a lot of like inventions as well. Like so fun fact, do you know, like, have you ever seen those guys like walking down the street with a stick and there's like a wheel on it and they're like measuring things?
The measuring stick.
It's not like a measuring stick, but it's like it's a stick and it has a wheel on the end of it,
Mm,
and they like push it along the ground. Have you seen those?
no, what is this?
Okay, I forget they have some name to them, but like they use it to measure roads or like very long things where you can't just use it like a measuring tape or whatever or measuring stick. So you might like stand on a sidewalk and then just walk with this thing for like
Mm-hmm.
700 meters or whatever, and then it will tell you how far you walked. But Leonardo da Vinci invented that thing, um, like way back when, with a wheelbarrow, because he was trying to draw a diagram of a city. I think it was I think it was Milan. Like he wanted to measure the outer walls of it, and
Mm-hmm.
like the Duke or whatever there was like, hey, I want you to draw a picture of the city for me, and it needs to be accurate. And Da Vinci was like, oh, like how do I actually do this? Because like I don't have any measurements. So what he did is somehow he came up with this thing where he had a wheelbarrow full of stones, and like every meter or something, some amount of distance, a stone would fall out. So because it was like in a drum or something. So then he took this thing, counted out like 1,000 stones or like however many he put in there, and then he walked around the whole castle wall and then counted how many stones were left at the end, and like you multiply how many fell out by however long that like the wheel distance is or whatever, and you figure out the circumference. Um, so like the fact that he was involved in like geology, inventions, and sketching, like all of those things tied into that invention. Um,
Mm.
and I really like that whole like polymath mentality where you're just like interested in everything and you want to like absorb information, and you love applying information from like two like two completely different domains, like um geography and sketching and like civil engineering.
Yeah.
Like you just like throw everything into one big basket, and like you don't see boundaries between disciplines. So yeah, those are the two. What would I ask them? The first question is, how are you alive? I thought you died already. No, but in all seriousness, in all seriousness, I have no idea what I'd ask them. I think I'd just be like super cool to like talk to them about like how they came up with some of these ideas, because like there's a lot of stories behind them. Like the one with that like the measurement device, like that one he wrote down in some of his journals.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm sure he had a whole bunch of other things that he didn't like talk about, right? Um, or like with Benjamin Franklin, it's like, how did you get the idea to like tie a key to a kite and then test if lightning was made of electricity or not? Like, what's the backstory there? Like, like
Yeah.
why did you even think about doing that? So like just asking them like how they got to that point would be super interesting.
I think this is a good reflection of how you think as well, and like what you value. Like you value curiosity, and that's why you're really
Mhm.
curious as to like throughout this conversation you've talked about like a lot of things, like fundamental stuff about LLMs, and like programming, and even bugs. Like I can really
Yeah.
see that you're a really, really curious person, and so much to unpack with that brain of yours. It's amazing.
Yeah,
And that brings us to
that's
our
fun.
final question. How would you like to be remembered?
Yeah, the big question.
Yeah.
Um, I I don't really know how to answer this question without getting too dark, so I'm just going to give you a dark answer.
Oh my God.
Um, I think like a lot of people like try to make a legacy, but then like within like one or two generations, nobody remembers who they are. So
Mm,
there's the dark truth that I'm just going to throw out there.
mm,
But like how I like my worldview is more that like all humans are much more interconnected than we normally think. So like I didn't make up any of the words I'm using right now.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't make this shirt. I didn't invent the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I have some glasses here. Like I didn't invent those, but I have them and I use them. Um like I didn't invent the computer. I didn't figure out how to generate light from electricity, and I have a lamp right here. I didn't invent a chair. And like there's just so many different things that we're connected to that somebody in the past figured out,
Yeah.
and we have no idea who those who their names were. Like who I like Edison is the famous one for the light bulb, but he wasn't actually the first inventor of the light bulb. He was the first one to make it usable. So like before him, there were like 7 other people who built light bulbs, but like they would burn out within 3 seconds or something, right? So like who are their like what are their names? I have no idea. Um,
But
like
they still
if you're
matter.
really
Yeah.
sorry,
But they still matter because
yeah,
without
it's
those
like
without
they still
those
matter.
failures, then maybe Thomas wouldn't have tried more, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like whether like the fact that there were people before him doing things like fed into him eventually like funding his company to research how to actually build a commercially viable light bulb, right? So why am I talking about all this? My worldview is that we're like very very interconnected, like as like from language to culture to like how society works together, to what we believe, to the language we use. So I think instead of saying how would I like to be remembered, I like to think of this question more as how do I want to change society? So,
Mm.
like, people probably won't remember me in 300 years, you know? Like, it's like even people who invent incredible things, like, a lot of time they just get forgotten. Like, Steve Jobs. Like, for me, like, sometimes I'll talk to like young engineers and they'll be like, "Oh, who is Steve Jobs again? Was that like
My God.
he's like some tech guy or something?" And I'm like, "Wow, it's like he didn't even die that he died like 10 years ago and people are already forgetting who he was, right?" And he's
Mm.
like probably one of the most famous people alive in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people are like already he's already slipping out of people's minds because there's new people that are famous for tech stuff. Um, but yeah, but there's no doubt that Steve Jobs fundamentally changed a lot of things in society. Um, for better or for worse, he made a huge impact on things. But circling back to the question, I want to do something that just makes the whole of society move in a direction that's more healthy, I guess.
Mm.
I don't really again, it's a hard question to answer. Like I don't really know what that means, but like as far as work goes, it's like okay, how do we make recruitment better? Like there's a lot of things in HR that are unfair and like people aren't being evaluated fairly and like there's a lot of bias based on like your name or what you look like and
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And if my contribution to society is like I somehow improve that by 5% or even like, hopefully more than that, but like if I contribute some amount to improving that, I think that would be a successful career. Um, and then as far as like personal life goes, like if I can improve um like society so that like including like people I talk to, like people I work with, and like family and stuff, like if I can improve their lives and like the next generation's lives a little bit,
Mm.
um, I think that's more important than like people remembering that I existed at some point. Because like again, I think we're all like like some type of distributed consciousness. So like whether I'm remembered or not, I don't really like to think about that question. And I just have a dark answer for it anyways. But yeah, thinking about how I want to improve society and like how I want to not even improve society, but like it's really abstract. Okay, it's a really abstract. I don't really know. I think I'm just rambling on about really weird things at this point. But if you're interested in this whole distributed consciousness type thing, check out the book "I Am a Strange Loop."
Mm.
It's very abstract, but it goes into the whole idea of like the self is an illusion, um,
Mm.
and we're all a lot more interconnected and stuff. It sounds a little bit hokey pokey, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but I also
So
see it in a different way. I think how you viewed this question is you took it in a very humble and noble way. So you're not thinking about like about yourself, right? Like you don't want to be like, oh, I remember Elijah. This is, he's so smart. Like he taught like this and stuff like that. But you actually want to do stuff that's gonna make a ripple effect towards something, and you don't even know what it is, but you just keep on going because you know you're doing something, I don't know, amazing, right?
yeah, yeah, that might actually be a good way to wrap this up without my weird ramblings.
No,
Like,
it's fine.
actually, like I had this we had this family friend when I was a kid, and he was like practically an uncle to me, but like not biologically related.
Uh-huh.
And um, his name was Tom, or is Tom. He's still with us, but he taught me about like how do circuits work and like how how can you tell the age of a tree by looking at a log.
Hmm.
And like I think he really shaped my curiosity like when I was a kid. um I don't think he was interested in bugs, but I probably asked him a lot of bug questions. But he like he would always ask me like curious questions and like tell me um like interesting things and like ask me questions that would like kind of like flip my my intuition on his head when I was a kid.
Hmm.
And I think he had like a really big impact on how I think. And like from my perspective, like that part of him is like living in me, right?
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Hmm.
And like if I could pass that on
Hmm.
to um like somebody else or like to my kids if slash when I have kids, um I think that would be like a successful life and like passing on like good values and um yeah, just making them live in a much more fascinating and hopefully better place.
Yeah, yeah, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so before we end, where can people find you? What is Searchless? And this is the time for you to like plug about what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. So Searchless. I gave little bits of teasers here and there. You could find me on LinkedIn at Elijah Moretsky. And as far as Searchless goes, we're an interview platform that uses AI to conduct interviews. So I talked a little bit about how I like to do interviews, which is very, behavioral. So that's basically how we also modeled the searchless interviews. So if you want to hire somebody who is a front-end developer, you can tell searchless, like, okay, ask them about their JavaScript and React experience, or whatever. And it will ask them, like, tell me about a time you used JavaScript to solve some complex problem. And then they'll say some answer, like, I did this video streaming project, blah, blah, blah. And then it will ask you follow-up questions based on what you say. So in that case, I gave an example of video streaming. So it'll probably like follow up with something like, oh, that sounds like a challenging project. Like, what was how did you handle like real-time video processing or whatever, like whatever follow-up question it comes up with. So it takes like a very like in-depth and human approach, funny enough, because with normal recruiters, a lot of the time they're looking for buzzwords
Mm.
and they're not like actually drilling down into what you did, like technically. And with Searchless, it's not really like testing your leet code abilities, or it's not looking for buzzwords or anything like that. It's really just exploring, can you build something complex and can you explain it to me? And yeah, that's how we're doing interviews. And you can find that on LinkedIn at searchless. So it's like the word search and then less, and it's just concatenated, or searchless.ca. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, all the best for Searchless. And yeah, it's been a wonderful podcast. You're s- you're such a curious person. You're so intellectual. You're one of the most intellectual person I've ever met and been in this podcast. It's been amazing. It's my
Thank you.
pleasure to talk with you and just to extract all these things from you. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and good luck for everything you're gonna do.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Faith. It's been fun. Great. Talk